They didn't see it. That doesn't mean it wasn't there. You brought your offering, they brought their opinions, and when the two collided, silence followed. But silence is not absence, and their rejection is not your rejection. The stone the builders rejected wasn't flawed, it simply didn't fit their design. But your blueprint was never theirs to approve, and your shape was never meant for their walls. You were carved for a cathedral they cannot imagine. You were shaped for a task they cannot carry. You were chosen, quietly, carefully, sovereignly. Before they closed the door, your path was already opening, because purpose doesn't begin with applause. It begins with alignment, and alignment often demands separation. The ones who walked away weren't punishment, they were prophecy. Some rejections are timed doors closing not to confine, but to redirect. You were never rejected, you were rerouted. You were not passed over, you were preserved, not hidden in shame, but kept in grace. There is a choosing that does not echo in crowds, it whispers in the chambers of the soul. It doesn't need claps, it needs clarity. It doesn't crave validation, it creates vision, and vision, my friend, always comes before visibility. Just because they couldn't see it doesn't mean it wasn't planted. Seeds go underground before they ever rise, and destiny always goes silent before it goes public. You thought they were walking away from you, but they were walking away from what they weren't assigned to understand. You are not late, you are not less, you are not lost, you are becoming. You are being forged in fire, not for their stage, but for your calling, because calling isn't convenient, it's costly, and what costs much is often misunderstood. You weren't overlooked, you were overqualified for their box. They couldn't see the treasure because it came in plain wrapping, but heaven has always seen in layers. Before the voice said not good enough, the author already whispered, mine. Before they walked away, you were already written in. Before they gave you a label, you were already carrying a legacy. Their rejection was loud, but your choosing was eternal. So walk, not with resentment, but with remembrance that purpose preceded pain. You are not the product of their opinions, you are the outcome of unseen design. Let them go, let it hurt, let it heal, but never let it lie to you. You were chosen long before they even had the chance to reject you. They said no, and you heard failure. But what if that no wasn't a wall, it was a mirror, not reflecting your lack, but revealing their limits? Rejection isn't always a measure of your worth. Sometimes it's a diagnosis of their vision. They couldn't see it because they weren't built to see it. Not everyone is wired to recognize greatness when it's still growing in silence. They saw the seed and dismissed the forest. They judged the shell and missed the treasure. Rejection feels final, but it's often just unfamiliar. People fear what they don't understand and ignore what they can't control. They didn't reject you because you had nothing. They rejected you because you carried more than they could handle. That no wasn't about your inability, it was about their insecurity. Your presence challenged their patterns. Your questions threatened their comfort. You didn't fail to impress, you failed to shrink. And not shrinking is a quiet kind of rebellion. You didn't belong in that room because your destiny would have outgrown its ceiling. They rejected the version of you they couldn't use. They didn't wait for the version of you that couldn't be used by them. But here's the truth: people often discard what they don't understand. You weren't too much, you just weren't manageable. You didn't make them look good, you made them look inward, and that's something not everyone's willing to do. Rejection doesn't always mean you were wrong. Sometimes it just means you were early. You walked into the room with questions they hadn't found the courage to ask themselves. You offered light, and they were still adjusting to the dark. You were the unfamiliar in a place addicted to familiar, and unfamiliar things often get labeled as unnecessary. But the mirror never lies. It shows them their fear, and it shows you your strength. It teaches you how people love conditionally, how support is often selective, how loyalty is rarely tested until success is delayed. Rejection has a voice and it's loud, but purpose is quieter and far more patient. You don't need to shout your worth to be valuable. You don't need their applause to prove your anointing. You were valuable in silence. You were chosen in obscurity, and what they refused to see did not disappear. Rejection does not erase what's real. It only delays its recognition. You can't base your identity on someone else's blind spot. Their opinion is not your prophecy. Their silence is not your signal. You are still becoming. And becoming requires rejection as part of the process, because the greatest sculptures are not built by consensus. They are carved in private by hands that know what others overlook. You were not cast aside. You were set apart, and the difference is subtle, but destiny always knows the difference. So let rejection speak. Let it echo if it must, but don't let it define you. Look into the mirror, not to question who you are, but to remember who they are not. They were not assigned to your future. They were simply visitors in your past. You are not waiting to be accepted. You are walking into what was already prepared. They didn't have the vision, but you do. So don't lower your light to make them comfortable in their shadow. Their rejection wasn't your ending. It was your unveiling, because rejection isn't a verdict. It's just a mirror, and mirrors don't determine your value. They only reflect what someone else is willing to see. You stared into that mirror. You saw their absence. You felt their silence, and silence hurts differently because it doesn't argue. It doesn't explain. It just lingers, like smoke in a room you didn't set on fire. They left, and left questions behind. Was I not enough? Was I too much? Did they ever see me at all? And that ache is real. It's not weakness, it's a signal that something broke, but not you, just the illusion that purpose is painless, because no one tells you rejection doesn't just sting, it awakens. It rattles the soul, it clears the fog, it turns noise into focus. Pain is a teacher, and rejection is its language. When they walked away, something else walked in. Clarity, not all at once, but piece by piece. You stopped trying to be what they preferred. You started becoming who you were always meant to be. Their exit created space, not just around you, but within you, space for truth, space for honesty, space to ask the questions you were afraid to face. What if I was never called to them? What if I've been waiting for doors I was never meant to knock on? What if rejection was permission? Because sometimes it takes pain to burn down false direction. Sometimes it takes heartbreak to strip away borrowed dreams. You were living on their expectations. You were moving by their timelines. You were waiting for their yes, and then came their no, sharp, sudden. Uninvited, but necessary, because comfort is a liar, and rejection is an alarm. You had settled in someone else's blueprint, and forgot you were carrying your own. Their departure forced the confrontation. Not with them, but with yourself. Who am I without their approval? What remains when the applause fades? What remained was purpose, small at first, barely visible, but present. The pain made you still. The stillness made you listen. The listening made you remember. You remembered the dreams you buried, the ideas you tucked away, the calling you postponed to stay accepted, and now, finally, you see it. Not because the path got easier, but because the noise got quieter. Pain has a way of pulling back the curtain, showing you what truly matters, showing you who truly matters. Rejection didn't just hurt. It reordered you. It shifted your gaze from them to him, from external approval to internal truth. You stopped chasing hands that never held you, and started building with what was always in you. You found stillness. You found strength. You found substance, because the truth is pain gives birth to clarity. And rejection, that unexpected midwife, pushed you into a season you didn't feel ready for. But you were ready. You just didn't know it yet. You were too loyal to what was safe, too faithful to what was familiar, and sometimes it takes being unwanted to discover that you are unshakable. You didn't choose the pain, but the pain chose you to wake you, to strip away what doesn't belong, to reveal what has always been there. You were always chosen, but you needed clarity to carry it, and clarity rarely comes without cost. So the next time it stings, the next time the door closes, the next time they walk away without explanation, remember you are not breaking, you are becoming, and the pain you feel may very well be the beginning of the purpose you've been searching for. You thought clarity would come with confirmation. You thought healing would come with recognition, but it didn't, and it won't, because being chosen doesn't always come with confetti. Sometimes it comes with silence. Sometimes it looks like isolation. Sometimes it feels like being overlooked again. But being chosen was never supposed to be public. It was meant to be personal, whispers before shouts, seed before spotlight, calling before crowd. You wanted the announcement, but destiny prefers anonymity, because what is sacred is first hidden. What is holy is always handled in private, and you were set apart long before the stage was set. Chosen in stillness, marked in moments no one else witnessed, not voted in, not posted, not liked into purpose, but still chosen, still seen, still significant. You were looking for confirmation from the outside, while heaven was confirming you on the inside. And just because it wasn't loud doesn't mean it wasn't real. Just because no one celebrated doesn't mean it didn't matter. We've confused fame with favor, but the two are not the same. Fame puts you in front of people. Favor prepares you before people even notice. Fame wants followers. Favor wants faithfulness, and right now you're in the favor stage. Quiet, unseen, unapplauded, but not unimportant. You're in the stretch, the shaping, the private schooling of the soul, because if public choosing came too soon, it would crush you. Visibility without maturity is sabotage. Exposure before readiness is danger, so you're not being denied. You're being developed. This is the part no one claps for, no one shares, no one reposts. The hours of self-doubt, the prayers with no answers, the tears in empty rooms. But these are the chapters that build you, the ones that prepare you to carry what your name was designed for. You think it's delay, but it's alignment. You think you're forgotten, but you're being formed. Chosen people don't always look chosen. They look ordinary, they look like rejection, they look like wilderness, but that's the point. The choosing is quiet so the character can grow loud. The choosing is secret so the soul can stay soft. If everyone saw it now, you'd start performing. You'd start bending, you'd start pleasing, and you weren't chosen to perform. You were chosen to become steady, to become deep, to become real, because the assignment you carry can't be carried by someone addicted to attention. It needs weight, it needs silence, it needs surrender, so don't curse the quiet. Don't resent the room with no audience. Don't despise the hallway between doors. That's where the choosing happens. That's where the molding takes place. And when it's time, the public part will come. But when it does, it won't define you, because you'll already know you were chosen before they noticed, before they clapped, before they cared, and that kind of choosing. It cannot be undone. It cannot be voted out. It cannot be cancelled, because it didn't start with them. It started with purpose, purpose that existed before applause ever echoed. So walk in it, even when no one's watching. Especially then, because the truest callings are built in silence but thunder when released. They didn't choose you, but they were never meant to. Their no was not a mistake. It was a mirror, reflecting that their hands couldn't carry what heaven entrusted to you. You thought their rejection was a stop sign. It was actually a redirect. You mourned their absence, but presence isn't always protection, and absence isn't always loss. Some were removed because your calling would have outgrown their capacity. They didn't walk away from you. They walked away from what they couldn't handle in you. Not every closed door is an attack. Some are assignments to push you toward who actually sent you. You were grieving over man's no. While heaven was marking you with mine, you begged for acceptance. But what you needed was authority, and authority never comes from people. It comes from alignment. You were chasing validation from voices that were never meant to crown you. They couldn't choose you because they didn't create you. They couldn't affirm you because your design was divine. You kept waiting for a seat at their table, but your name was already engraved on a different one. They said you weren't qualified, but they didn't read the blueprint. Because the blueprint said, set apart, handpicked, prepared in secret, you looked at the empty rooms and thought something was wrong with you, but some stages stay dark until the right time, and your time was never tied to their timing. What felt like delay was actually protection, because if they had accepted you, you would have adjusted to fit, and fitting in would have cost you your original shape. You would have edited yourself to stay embraced. You would have lowered your volume to stay liked. You would have become a version of yourself that was manageable but miserable. So rejection came not to punish you, but to preserve you, to remind you that you were never designed for their plans. You were always too much for places built on small thinking and divine selection. It doesn't ask for permission. It moves through rejection like water through cracks unstoppable, because what is divine doesn't die in disappointment. It deepens. It becomes fire in your bones. It becomes purpose under pressure. It becomes vision in the valley. They thought they were dismissing you, but they were actually documenting the moment you outgrew their reach. Every no became a nail not in your coffin, but in the foundation of something they could never build. You didn't lose your way. You lost their weight. You didn't miss the mark. You missed their limits. You didn't fall. You were freed. And when you stopped chasing seats at tables you weren't made for, you find the courage to build your own. Tables where your voice doesn't shake. Tables where your presence isn't negotiated. Tables where your oil isn't wasted. Man's rejection was loud, but heaven's choosing was louder, not in volume but in certainty, and certainty doesn't need approval, it needs obedience. So obey the voice that called you when no one else clapped. Follow the path that lit up only under your feet, and trust that if they left, if they ignored, if they overlooked, it only confirms they were never your source. Divine selection doesn't consult human opinion. It doesn't need the crowd. It needs your yes. You were set apart, marked before the foundation, chosen before the rejection, and every person who turned their back only pushed you closer to the one who never will. You were chosen, but you weren't celebrated. You were marked, but not mentioned. You were confirmed in the quiet, but questioned in the crowd, because real callings don't come with cheerleaders. They come with resistance. You wanted applause, but what you got was confusion. People looked at you sideways because they couldn't see what was forming inside. They asked what you were building, but you didn't have words yet. You tried to explain. They didn't understand, because calling doesn't always speak in language others can hear. It speaks in conviction, in weight, in burden, and burdens can't be broadcast. They have to be carried. You carry something no one else can see, not yet, not fully, not clearly, but you feel it, that tension between who you are and who they still think you are, that ache of being too deep for shallow rooms. Too awake for sleeping circles. They don't applaud because they don't recognize it. You look like the same person to them, but inside something's breaking open, and the breaking is sacred, but it's also lonely. The more you obey the call, the fewer people understand the cost. They don't clap because they're not called to carry what you carry. Their silence is not your failure. It's your separation. You were never meant to be explained. You were meant to be revealed, but revelation comes in stages, not in spotlights. You want confirmation, but you're in formation, and formation feels like obscurity, like planting a seed and no one checking to see if it's growing. But that's how greatness begins, in soil, in silence, in secret. Before the fruit there's a fight to believe when no one affirms, a fight to keep going when no one is watching, a fight to stay faithful when it feels fruitless. Because true calling isn't proven in applause, It's proven in perseverance. Can you keep moving without recognition? Can you keep building without praise? Can you keep showing up when no one sees it yet? Because if you need a crowd to keep going, you're not called. You're just craving attention. But if you can endure the silence, if you can survive the obscurity, if you can stay steady when it's quiet, then you're walking in something real. People often only celebrate results, but God measures endurance. They only clap when they see the outcome. But calling is built in the middle, the messy middle. Where you question, where you wrestle, where you pray for strength to believe what no one else can see. They don't see it yet. That's okay. It's not time yet. That's okay. Because applause that comes too early can confuse your pace. It can make you sprint when you should still be walking. It can make you perform when you were meant to be preparing. The spotlight is dangerous if you haven't mastered the shadows. So stay in the shadows a little longer. Let the unseen strengthen you. Let the hidden build you. You're not behind. You're being built. And when the time comes, it won't be for applause. It'll be for impact, not performance, but purpose, not fame. But fruit, let them wonder, let them whisper, let them walk away. Your calling isn't waiting for their agreement. It's waiting for your obedience, so walk on without the claps, without the likes, without the nods. Because those who are truly called know that the early stages are rarely applauded, but always necessary.